Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show, your one-stop shop for weird news, movie reviews, otherworldly, and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow Creepin' It Real Show on Twitter at creepin_it. You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. And you can also go to our website, creepinitshow.com. Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show. I'm one of your hosts, Yardley, on a rainy day here in Atlanta. I want to bring in my co-host, Moni, from the hopefully sunny state of California. How are you doing?
I'm well. We have a little overcast stuff going on. It's supposed to rain tomorrow. And it's been a little unseasonable, but we did have a couple really nice, like 70-degree days this week. So I'll take it. And actually, I'll take the cooler day because I'm going to be working outside today. We have a Food Network star coming for a book signing at the library. So I will take this overcast anytime.
Oh, all right. That's what's up. Hey, Christy, how you doing?
I'm good. Talking about that rain. Glad I'm not at the Shaky Knees Festival. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Hasn't been a good weekend for festivals.
What is
but
that one?
It's a big festival that they have here. I actually went to the after party concert last night. I didn't get home till 3:30, so I am completely out of my gourd right now. I'm probably
But you
still
had
a little,
fun.
yeah, still a little bit drunk. I was probably 10 feet from the stage with Group Love and was just,
Nice.
my feet feel like I thought that I was 20 and I'm actually 44. I can barely walk, but I was like not moving from that spot because we got such a good spot. It was really good, but yeah, I am hardcore hurting this morning. It was a crazy wrap up from a crazy week anyway, and had we not bought these tickets in advance, that would have never happened because I've had the most crazy ass week ever. So anyway, I did not get our show posted. Of course, by the time you guys hear this, it will be posted. I apologize. I had to skip a week. There was just no way in actual hell I could do it. So
Hey,
edit it.
apologize
So
for nothing. You're welcome for the awesome
yeah,
content. We love it all. We'll get it when we get it.
it's free. So take it. Yeah, exactly. Take it when you get it. But anyway, thanks for working with me, and I'm excited to talk about. We're gonna totally nerd out this week. So it's
Hell
kind of
yeah.
exciting. I don't know what half of what happened in that movie, so y'all are just gonna have to maybe do.
Yesterday was Free Comic Book Day. Yardley, did you do anything fun? I just wanted to make sure we hit that before we get into the nerddom.
No, I actually did not participate in that. And actually, last night, I was actually looking at the list of the comic books that were free and then realized that I pretty much spent my day relaxing, not doing much, but I can appreciate that as well as comic books.
Oh my gosh, we did a tour de force because we went to a comic book shop. Shout out to SoCal Games and Comics here in Kila. And then we actually hit up my old employer as of 2 weeks ago, Escondido Public Library, for their free comic book day celebrations, because it was also May the 4th. Like, it was just heaping nerdgasm day because they had the 501st Legion of the Star Wars cosplayers come, and they're amazing because they volunteer their time to like dress up in these super warm costumes and do things for the kids, and it's super duper fun. So we had a whole out day. SoCal had some great people signing and visiting and swag bags and all kinds of stuff. So cheers to all you nerds. Now it'll be about a week out after you hear this, but I hope you guys had a good May the 4th. And I did see, oh my God, I just blanked out on his name. The guy, Mark Hamill, he tweeted, if you've ever said, "May the 4th be with you," you must be a huge virgin.
You're cutting out a little bit, Moni.
Mark Hamill tweeted out that if you've ever said, "May the 4th be with you," you must be a huge virgin. Which I think he's the only one in Nerdland who could get away with speaking to other nerds that way.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if Bill Maher was to say that, it would be a fucking... Anyway, yeah, well, actually, I want to kind of double up on that. Big ups to the 501st. We've got a garrison down here in Atlanta. Props to Steve Vitale. He gets involved in a lot of the stuff that they have going on. And just as you mentioned, Moni, they do a lot of stuff in the community, especially with the kids in the hospitals. So they definitely have their act together as far as giving back to the community.
Sure.
Now today, we're kind of going to be creeping on more of the pop culture side. We just figured there wasn't really a movie that I could think of so far this year, or even going into the rest of the year, that's bigger than Avengers Endgame. So we decided that we would do a spoiler review for that movie. And I actually put in the show notes, it's a heaping pile of fan service served up on a platter, and it was good as fuck. So
Yes.
for me, I guess we could just start this off. I'm pretty sure that everybody here did see Infinity War going into
Oh,
this
yeah.
movie, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tonally, Infinity War had a different pacing, a different tone, and of course, the motivations of the characters were different in the previous movie. This movie, I know a lot of people, including me a little bit, I kind of figured I didn't really want Infinity War Part 2. So I knew that for them to conclude this story, I understood that there were definitely things that they were going to have to do differently. So the first thing that I want to ask, both of you, either of you jump in first, is the feel and the tone of the movie and the pacing. Did that work for you? And were you expecting something similar to what we got in Infinity War?
100%. And I'm glad they did do that, because I think back in the older days of superhero movies or any kind of like fantasy movies, there was a lot of like, okay, a bunch of characters die, but then the next episode comes, or the next movie or whatever, and we don't acknowledge that happened. Kind of, it's just kind of like, someone died, moving on. But now you kind of get a little bit of what it would be like if half the freaking universe was gone. That tone of like that we got at the end of Infinity War, where it's just kind of a quiet, how do you move forward? And I think that made it, the whole thing, a lot more realistic. If you're going to call a superhero movie realistic, that was definitely more on pace with what humans would be like after something like that occurred.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. I liked, I mean, I was having a hard time remembering kind of how Infinity Wars ended. And I was thinking, is this picking up from Captain Marvel? Because I haven't seen Captain Marvel. So I was kind of lost at the beginning, but I really did like how it was like instant. I mean, they started you off going, what? Like half of them are gone? Like it was kind of a, whoa. Um, and I mean, I really was sitting there trying to figure out how are they going to pull this off. So it was good. I liked how they started it.
Yeah, it was definitely a movie that you didn't have to see Captain Marvel to be able to dive into this.
Yeah.
However, if you did and you watch the end credit scenes, then there might be a couple of things that made, a little bit more sense. But yeah, so for the most part, I think that I could say that we all kind of expected something slightly different. I didn't have any doubt that I was going to be entertained because they really killed it with Infinity War. So I knew that we would get that, but just like everybody else, you're kind of wondering how they were going to resolve the events of the last movie. So, is there anything before I actually dive into the actual spoiler review and we break down the different elements of this? Is there anything else as far as your expectations going in that y'all wanted to comment on, or are you good?
Just as you said, the fan service, I really appreciated that, and of course we can recap when we get to the end. But I think that this movie, for me, but being the 3 hour runtime, it felt fast. It didn't feel like a lot that I would have trimmed out, and it was satisfactory in terms of how it ended and what fans got out of it, I think.
No, and it's funny because I remember seeing that text, Christy. So you didn't even know that it was 3 hours when you went in.
No. I was like,
I was like,
holy
where have
shit.
you been? Do you have the internet? Like,
Y'all, I don't pay. I mean, listen, I totally appreciate, the comics and the superhero stuff, but Godzilla is my superhero. Like, I don't the
I'm so excited for that movie.
I know. And I really, you know what, when I was watching this and when I was watching Infinity Wars, I'm really into it when I'm watching it. But when it comes out, like, I'm just kind of like, huh, like it's not a huge priority. So I went and got my ticket, and somebody asked, when is this movie end, who was right in front of me, and the movie starts at 6, and she's like 9:30, and I'm like, what? Wait a minute, did I like stop into a wormhole or something? Like, what the hell happened?
I mean, did you miss all the posts about where you're supposed to go pee and all that stuff?
No,
Come on, girl,
but
get with it.
I was sitting because the theater was full, and so there was no room, there was no seats in between me and the other people. So this girl sat next to me with her daughter and her husband had already seen it. And she was like, and I was like, apparently this thing, because we were both ordering wine, and I'm like, I guess I better just get like one glass, because apparently this thing's really long and I'm not going to be able to pee. And she goes, oh, you didn't read the internet thing? And I was like, no. She's like, well, my husband's already seen it, so if you need to go to the bathroom, ask me, and I'll ask him if it's a good time to go. And I was like, okay. I'm like, holy crap. It didn't seem like 3 hours, though. It really didn't. I wasn't feeling like, oh, this is so long. And I guess, like, the thing that I really appreciated about the movie was there were several times in the movie where they really, really, like, got the woman power thing going. Like,
yes,
bitches don't play. And, like, they did that. And I thought I appreciated that, because
for sure.
you don't see a lot of that in comics, or in, superhero movies, where it's like, let's get all the girls together and kick some serious ass, So I thought that there was a part in there that stood out to me, and I was like, yes, thank you, that's awesome. So I definitely appreciated that.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely get into that. So let's go ahead and jump into the review. So 3 weeks after Thanos used the Infinity Stones to disintegrate half of all life across the universe, we see Tony Stark and Nebula stranded in space and running out of supplies and oxygen. Just when you think that they are goners, Carol Danvers rescues Nebula and Tony Stark from deep space. Moni, was this something that you kind of theorized yourself? Because, the trailers don't really show you much, but I think that we all thought that Tony was somehow going to get out of that situation. Did you have a particular way that you thought that he would get out of that predicament?
I mean, that was really the only way, that far from Earth and everything else. P.S. I loved seeing more of Nebula in general in this film. I think the actress is fantastic, and I was really happy to kind of see her character become still a killing machine and a badass, but like more than that with her sister and everything else that we'll get into. But that was the only way that was going to go. I mean, who else can go into space? Who else can like have that kind of visibility in space? And then for all the people that were like, how they know where to look from? Because that was a thought that I had too. But my husband was like, well, they had an idea of where he went and trajectory, and who knows how long. I mean, 3 weeks in her time, Carol Danvers could have been looking, I don't know. I feel like it's feasible that she could have found the only ship floating in space that's on the path that, that he was known to have kind of disappeared at.
Mm-hmm.
Christy, what you got?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll be honest with you. I did not know who that was that he was with, because I've never seen Guardians of the Galaxy. So I've never.
Those movies are great. You would like them. You should check that out.
I will. I've never seen Guardians of the Galaxy. Let's get this out of the way now. Never seen Guardians of the Galaxy. Never seen Ant-Man. And never seen Captain Marvel. So I was all kinds of confused. I mean, I knew the basis.
Do her homework.
Well, there's a lot of fucking homework. It's like, holy crap, I'm going to make a list, because I don't know who some of these people are. But, and I guess the only thing that bothered me about this is they did the whole, I'm about to run out of oxygen, and she just comes in the nick of time. And that was the only thing that kind of bugged me about it. But otherwise, it makes sense that she'd be the only person that would be able to find them. So, and then once I got to know and figure out who Nebula was, I really liked her character. It was funny how he was like trying to like play a game with her, and she was, trying to be casual and not, all badass and try to play football with him,
What did he call her, Yardley? The meanie up here or something like that? He had a little nickname when he was doing his like log of, his diary. He was like the meanie up here or something like that. I don't remember.
It might have been something along those lines. It's not coming to me.
Yeah.
He was just cute just because she is so closed off, and that's the best she can be for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, had anybody who went and saw Captain Marvel, if they stayed till the end credit scenes, you see Captain Marvel come down responding to the page that Nick Fury sent off at the end of Infinity War before he got dusted. And basically, they tell Captain Marvel everything that happens. And then the very last shot of Captain Marvel is of her flying up into space. And I believe that that's the moment when she was flying to go get Tony at the end.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of cool treat for people who saw that movie.
Yeah.
So, go ahead. You have something, Moni?
Oh, no.
Okay, so they return to Earth and join the remaining Avengers: Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, Bruce Banner, who's the Hulk, Steve Rogers, Captain America, Rocket Raccoon, Rabbit, Thor, Pepper Potts, who actually later on in the movie we see as Rescue. Then you have James Rhodes, who's War Machine, are at the compound. So after Tony settles in, he fiercely reprimands Cap for past decisions and passes out from exhaustion and malnutrition. And I tell you, I just want to get your thoughts on Tony's statements. Do you think that they were true? Were his criticisms of Cap unfair? But I have to give props to the people who do, their special effects, because he looked like he was about to fall to pieces, and they really sold that they were out of food and water, and he just looked like he probably weighed 70 pounds.
Yeah, and his performance sold it as well. And, I didn't blame him for not being in his right mind. And I don't blame anybody under those conditions. It's a whole, you weren't there, you didn't see what Cap had to deal with on this end, nor did he see what you had to deal with. And so from his point of view, yeah, that was fair. From Cap's point of view, obviously, less so. But Cap is always going to be the guy that's like, takes it and accepts the criticism and internalizes it anyway, instead of just being like, fuck you, dude. Like, I did what I did or whatever. But it goes back to the whole ideology that they were fighting for in the first place, is like fighting against each other in the first place, is like, should you have to register, or can you have your privacy as a superhero? It all stems kind of back to that, which side of that you fall on anyway.
Yep. I agree. I mean, I think they both had valid reasons in their own way to be upset with each other. And I mean, that happens, especially when, like you said, you're forced to deal with the things that they both had to deal with. And yeah, I mean, I think they handled it better than probably most people, actually.
So I have a relationship question. Bruce Banner is now full Hulk, like he's no longer Bruce Banner, the meek man. Are we sad, Yardley, that him and Natasha never actually hooked it up, or does that seem like the way that it should have been in the movie?
No, I totally believe they should have kept going with that storyline with him and Natasha. I mean, what is it, the first one in Ultron, I thought that they were kind of selling it, so I thought that would always be a good idea for them to follow up on it, because I also felt like, we hear stories Natasha mentioned about, some adventure that she and Clint went on, Sokovia or something or another. It's been mentioned in more than one movie, but I didn't really feel like their relationship was tighter, or the way that it was shot, or the way that the actors interact. I can buy that they cared for each other. I just think that it felt more organic with her and Bruce, and it just seems like out of nowhere they cut that off. So
and some people were saying that she and Cap actually had more chemistry, as far as relationships, and obviously that was never going to happen for various reasons that we'll talk about. But still, I just kind of feel like too, Bruce was not in a place when he was first struggling with being the Hulk to have been in a relationship at that time. But I think both of them had come to such a better place, like obviously before the snap, as humans, that I think that they could have had room for that relationship if they actually wanted to make that happen. And so kind of the wistfulness that they show later in the film of when stuff happens to Natasha that we'll get into, of him kind of having that regretfulness. It's like, well, seriously, you're right. Like, you guys didn't even try to have a relationship. You guys were always sweet on each other. You guys had figured your shit out as far as who you were as people. Like, why why didn't this happen? Anyway, that's my whole 2 cents on that.
Well, I've got an easy answer for that, though. The more that the universe expands and the more people you have to give things to do to, that might have also been a casualty of production. But hey, Christy,
Hmm.
want to speak on anything about that? But you don't even.
I didn't even
Are
know
you
there was.
shipping them or not?
Yeah.
Honestly, I had no idea. I love the Hulk. I love the guy that plays the Hulk. I'm not. It was just weird that he was then like Hulk all the time to me. I thought it was kind of funny and cute that he had kind of embraced his inner, Hulk and just then decided to become him permanently. But it was also weird to me. And so I don't know. It kind of ruined like my crush on him in a sense. I don't know. I kind of like him, like he's all meek and nerdy and cute, and then all of a sudden you piss him off, and he's this huge force. So
Yeah.
it was like how is he going to handle fighting and stuff? I mean, he handled it fine. It was just funny to me, and I did not know there was any kind of situation between the two of them. And you would think if it was going to happen, half the population being wiped out would have made, if there was something there, they would definitely have made it happen then. Because what else you're going to run, and like appreciate life and try to, find your happiness knowing that you're left and so many people are gone. So I guess if it was going to happen, it should have happened then, and it certainly didn't. But I wish he would, have hooked up with somebody because he's
I had
cute.
zero sympathy at that point where it was
No
just like,
shit.
well, you guys never made this happen, and now it can't happen for reasons we'll discuss in a minute.
Yep.
So.
Okay, so a traceable energy pulse gets Rocket's attention, and they're able to track down Thanos because he uses the gauntlet again. And with Nebula's help, they pinpoint an exact location. We find out that Thanos is on an uninhabited planet where he's living alone as a humble farmer. We see a weak and injured Thanos gathering fruit in his garden with no defenses or protection whatsoever. When the Avengers set out and arrived to kill Thanos, we find out that Thanos had used the gauntlet a second time to destroy all the stones so that nobody can reverse what he had done, and the second surge nearly kills him. Thor, who's still reeling from his failure to kill Thanos the first time, swings Stormbreaker and decapitates Thanos mid-sentence as he's talking to the group. Now, this was a surprise for everybody because I think at this point, we're maybe a good 15 minutes, 20 minutes into the movie. But when they did that, it was surprising, but it was a good surprise. So when you do that early, I think that let me know that the way the rest of this thing is going to play out is probably going to be a lot different, from what I might have been thinking going in. So what did we think about Thanos being killed so early? Did it catch you off guard? The only thing that I realized was that Thanos was a man of his convictions, and he never wanted to be omnipotent with his power, which you could argue was kind of a good moral choice.
And I'm glad you put that in there because last film obviously was devastating what he did, and he nor does anybody have the right to choose who should live or die. I guess he doesn't technically choose. It's just a matter of, put bad luck when you do the snap. But you kind of, and I think this is where the best villains come from, where you're like, they're wrong, but you can kind of see their point. I mean, from his point of view, the kind of struggles that the universe has due to not having enough resources to feed everyone, due to constant war, poverty, all these things, you kind of, on a tiny way, see the point of like lowering the population. There's no good way to go about that, and he's definitely the villain here. But you kind of are like, at least to me, I was like, you kind of get where his head's at. And in this film, I was fine with him being dead and not being in the rest of it because he had just become kind of the villain that's just like, I am, what did he say? I am destiny, not destiny, but I'm inevitable or something like that. He just became such a trope villain that's just going to wax about how great he is and about how he made the right choice and, kind of gloat and kind of, he was just a dick in this one, just for the couple minutes that you see him, that I was like, you know what, go away. Like, you were interesting as far as your morality and your choices before, and now just it's time for you to be dead. So I was happy with that. Well, and also we got to talk about Thor in a minute too. So
his morality is like looking at basically like looking at ants. Like he's not looking at people as people. He's looking at them as needing to be exterminated. Half of the population needing to be exterminated. So
I was glad
I don't
that he was
even.
willing to sacrifice his own beloved daughter, though, because that you do see him grieve for Gamora in Infinity War, and I do think that was the one thing where you can also that tiny kernel of like this person was willing to sacrifice, something like what other people are going to sacrifice when this happens. Although you could argue his capacity to love anyone isn't the same as everyone else.
I don't consider
Well,
him
and
giving up
well,
anything, because I don't think he has that in him to love anything. Really, really love it. He had
well,
got.
the thing about getting dusted though is that you're not being killed; you're just ceasing to exist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
true.
yeah, so it's does it hurt? I don't know, but
I don't know.
uh,
Spider-Man said he didn't feel so good.
yeah, a little queasy, but yeah, I thought that it worked as well. And the cool thing, which was something that you didn't get in the comics. Well, I like the rules that were established for the film that gave physical consequences to using all the Infinity Stones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I thought that, the line where Thor said, hey, I went for the head when they asked why did he do it. But I just really did think that that was cool. It's just the fact that you use the stones 2 or 3 times, you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, all the stones together. So I thought that that was kind of cool. So all right, so at this point in the story, we flash forward to 5 years later. Scott Lang, Ant-Man, escapes from the quantum realm. This is where he was stuck at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, and finds Romanoff and Rogers at the Avengers compound. So after the movie was over, and you have a ton of discussion about this film, a lot of people had felt like the beginning was slow, and I thought that it was okay for them to show the perspectives of Scott and Clint and show the effects that the snap had on those characters, because we didn't see those characters
Yeah.
in the previous movie. So it kind of raised the stakes for those characters. So did that first hour of kind of setting them up, did that bother you, or or you accepted it and it wasn't a drag?
I liked seeing what the snap was like from perspectives we hadn't seen, because if you were not actively fighting Xanos at the time, you would have been freaking confused. Excuse me, my 2-year-old is trying to get in. Um, you would have been freaking confused. Or what if you had been taking a nap and you woke up and half of everybody was gone? That was basically the equivalent of Scott Lang, not being there when it happened and having to find out through the news or ever. So that was kind of interesting. I found it kind of heartbreaking, but fun to kind of see through that perspective.
I didn't see the other movie, so I was kind of like, I mean, it was easy to figure out. I'm not, stupid. So I'm like, clearly he was stuck somewhere, and he was the guy that got little, figured that out, check. And then, yeah, I mean, I can imagine, if you can imagine, like, being gone. He said he felt like he was only gone for 5 hours, and then getting out, and his daughter's aged 5 years. That would be a little crazy. I didn't really know who he was when he first showed up, and then I figured it out. But yeah, I mean, I don't see why anybody would bitch. I didn't think any of that was slow. You got to have some context to some of this, because you don't just go right into the ass kicking unless, what is that? Unless you're Game of Thrones. It was
Well,
like,
I thought that yeah, I think he said he felt like he was gone for a few minutes or something like that, Mona. 5 minutes or a
I
few
think it was
minutes or
5 hours,
5 hours, or
wasn't
it was
it?
something like
Yeah, it
yeah,
was.
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, 5 hours. Okay. Um, let's see here. Okay, so Scott suggests traveling back in time via the quantum realm to thwart Thanos in the past. So they asked Tony to help develop a time machine for him, but Tony refuses because he has a young daughter. We find this out early on in the movie, and he's worried about what messing around with the timeline might do to his family. And he's
Mm-hmm.
pretty much in a happy place, but in a happy place with serious PTSD. So at this point, when we find out that Tony had settled down and he has a daughter, was this something that worked for you? I mean, I thought it worked better after seeing how it all ended at the end of the movie. You know what I mean? So for me, in a way, Tony got to at least experience a lot of the things that he's always wanted. So did I Love You 3000 land with you, Moni?
Yeah, it was good. It was nice to see him in a good place because being Iron Man as being, the first of the films, he's always struggled as a character to find kind of his happiness. And he and Pepper have always struggled to make things work between the two of them because he always had that darkness of needing to, tweak around, kind of sort of semi play God, depending on how you look at it. And so to see him kind of living outside of that and finding some peace and kind of living a more normal life for a billionaire, what did you say, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, like all,
Yeah.
it was interesting. And I to me in the films, he's always a dick, honestly. Like, to some extent, I'm always like, God, why is he such a dick? Like, I'm team Cap all the way. And so at least when he turned them down initially on doing the time machine, I get it. I get why he didn't want to do that, but I was still like, obviously he's going to have to change his mind or there's no more movie. And also, what a dick. So,
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm team Iron Man all the way. I understand. Tony Stark is so misunderstood, and one of the things that we have seen on more than one occasion. Now, this is the guy that in the first Avengers was about to make the ultimate sacrifice by taking the nuke up, and was going to blow
Right.
up, blow up. I think it was Thanos' ship or whoever. He was going to blow it up, and everybody thought he was dead. So we know that he would be willing to put his life on the line. And even some of the decisions that kind of crossed the line between government overreach by registering, being a superhero and all this other stuff. In Ultron, he wanted to make a defense system, I think, that pretty much would protect against some of the threats like Thanos would come in, and of course Cap was against that. This guy's gone through a lot, man. Motherfucking Captain America knew who killed Tony's fucking parents and kept that from him.
yeah,
That's one of the reasons
true.
why. That was one of the reasons why he wasn't worthy to pick up the hammer in Ultron. After Infinity War happened and they got all that shit off their chest, as we know later on in the movie, he becomes worthy and he's able to wield the hammer. So I mean, so I'm saying the Cap has some warts too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. No, absolutely. Everyone has done their shit by this point.
All right, so the Avengers instead turn to Bruce Banner after Tony Stark's pretty much tells him to kick rocks, but he did offer them something to eat before they left, as long as they didn't talk about work, so to speak. So at this point, we find out that Bruce Banner has transformed into what a lot of comic readers know as Professor Hulk. He has now gained control over his Hulk aspect and can become the Hulk or stay the Hulk without losing control of his anger and intelligence. So Banner ends up agreeing to help. He tells them that they can't alter history, but they can instead retrieve the Infinity Stones from the past and reverse the disintegration in the present. So Banner struggles, but he ends up constructing a working time machine. And then Stark, who ends up changes his mind, ends up coming to help him complete the project. So with that 5-year time jump, the way that they introduced the Hulk, I thought that it was really cool. Everything with the selfies and the kids, and I thought that that was really cool. And his interaction with what is it, Paul Rudd? Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that he plays.
He's like, I'm Ant-Man. And they're like, no.
Exactly. I totally thought that that worked. But one of the things that they did in this movie was try to establish their own rules for time travel. They even mentioned, no, this isn't, they literally said this isn't Back to the Future time travel. For the most part, was their explanation about how they would time travel and what their rules were and what they could do from it, was that easy for you to track throughout the movie?
Yeah, I mean, as much as it ever is, and I liked watching them struggle with it and argue and have the comedic moments of them being like, wait, is it like this? But it's not like that. No, that can't be how it works. Like, that was kind of fun, too, to watch their dynamic as they were struggling with it, same as the audience. I think that was the right move to make if you're going to confuse people a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Chrissy? Yeah, I mean,
I felt the same way. I don't, time travel that's the great thing about time travel is you can change the rules anytime you want with any movie. And I liked how they chose it to be more for under the Ant-Man's other dimension versus versus actual, like, getting the DeLorean type time travel. I thought they handled that very well.
Yeah, did you end up seeing it in 3D?
No, it was weird because the gave me the option, but it was for like Texas. I was like, why do you have me in Texas? So no, it didn't. My theater in here in Atlanta that I go to did not have the option, and I didn't have time to go find another one, so I just went in the regular one.
All right.
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm afraid to ask this question because I feel like I should know it, but I don't, and so I'm just going to ask. Where was Wonder Woman during all this? Is she not in this universe? Does she not exist in this plane
Nah.
of
Right.
superheroes?
She's in the DC
She's in
universe.
the
That's what I figured, but I'm like, was waiting for her to pop up, and I was like, where is she? I
Yeah.
like her. Oh, okay, she's probably not
No,
in
you
this.
like her because she's the only good thing about the DC cinematic universe.
Who else is DC? I can't even, like, nothing comes to
Okay,
mind.
see, look, now, Moni, we truly know what we're dealing with
Yeah,
Christy.
I don't
So,
have a clue.
no, I mean, it's all good. I mean, it's actually even better to have you on because your expectations for what happens in this movie. I mean, you take it for what it's worth,
Yeah.
and we can get a pure thing. You know what I mean?
A cool perspective, I think, instead
Yeah.
of the fans, the like hardcore fans.
I
So
have no clue.
Batman and Superman, to answer your question, Christy.
Batman and Superman, and
yeah,
he's dead,
this
and
really
Superman's
terrible
dead.
Scott Snyder, or Scott Snyder, no. Snyder. What's his first name? Anyway, those really terrible films with the bad pacing and the really like way too self-serious. Those are the ones that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of those. I do like Wonder Woman though, and I was wishing that would have been really cool if she had popped.
That would have been cool. Crossover event.
Yeah, give us some Wonder Woman.
The shock of all fans. She comes and helps because saving the earth is saving the earth.
Can't we all just get along?
Yes.
Anyway, moving on. Sorry, guys.
All right. So Romanov travels to Japan.
Sorry. Anyways, yeah.
Okay, so Romanov travels to Japan to retrieve Clint, who has become a vicious vigilante, a Ronin, so to speak, from the comics, and brings him back to the Avengers headquarters. Banner and Rocket Raccoon travel to Norway, where the survivors of Asgard have established a small fishing community. There they find Thor, who has become a brooding, obese drunk with really bad PTSD. So after some argument, Banner convinces Thor to rejoin the Avengers. So, of course, we have to talk about this Thor. What are your thoughts on obese PTS Thor and the fact that they left him that way for the whole movie?
First of all, props to this film for making Thor cosplay something attainable for everybody.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm expecting to see a lot of that at Comic-Con.
There's going to be a lot of Thors dressed as the dude.
I took my shirt off and wore a wig, and I'm Thor.
Yep, pretty much.
And also props to this movie. I think, as I was mentioning about the slow pacing in the beginning too, is to really do not an in-depth or anything, but a small examination of what some people's reactions would be to the shit that Thor and all the gang have been through at this point. This guy has lost, everything on every level. And though they made it comedic, which I think was a really nice high point of the film to just kind of have the funny bits of seeing him like that, it also is pretty real about how some people's reactions would be to some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there, so I get it.
We've all been PTSD.
Yeah, I was cracking up that they like decided to mesh him with the Big Lebowski, but I mean, it was different. Those sweaters and his hair and his beard was pretty funny. But again, yeah, that's sometimes what happens when you're in a bad place. So hey,
yeah, for sure.
Kudos to them for making it real.
I liked him cussing out the kids that they were playing video games with too. That was pretty funny.
Funny.
Sure, you're the guy. Like,
oh my God, that was funny.
All right, so Barton ends up testing the time machine and successfully travels back in time for a few minutes. He briefly sees his family and proves that the plan is at minimum viable. The Avengers split into several groups for their mission. We have Banner, Rogers, and Lang, and Stark. They all traveled to New York City back in 2012. Banner visits the Sanctum Sanctorium and convinces the Ancient One to give him the Time Stone. But
That
she
was a cool
warns,
scene too.
yes, and she warns him that after the Avengers are done using them, they must return the stones to their original time frames to prevent the universe from breaking down. So basically, the Ancient One tells him that whatever you do, it's basically just creating a new timeline. And even though it's a new timeline, you still have to bring those stones back, as not to kind of disrupt all of the other timelines. But
So
what you were saying, Moni, that Ancient One, like literally knocking your soul out your body, that never gets old.
Yeah, it doesn't. She's really fun to watch, and as you were saying about the pairings too, in these, and as far as who went with who, I liked seeing this movie with half the characters gone. You had more time to develop the characters that you did have, and also shake up their relationships. It's like it's not always Bucky and Cap, or some of the pairings that we've seen before. It's like we're shaking it up a little, which was super fun to see.
I had never seen Doctor Strange, so again,
Oh my
I
God.
was way, way lost. I'm like, who the fuck is this bitch? Why is she knocking his soul out? What happened to the Hulk? What's going on? I was a little confused. But then when she said Doctor Strange, I'm like, oh, yeah, I never seen that one either.
Well, it's kind of funny because when she was casted, there was like this online outrage about her being casted.
What?
It's kind of
Why?
funny because
I
since that's
love her.
happened, I really like her. I'm like,
She's
I don't think
awesome.
anybody else should be her.
Yes, we like her. Fight us.
But
Tilda
that'll
is
be
the
it. That's
shit.
it for her.
Who could be mad at that? She's awesome.
Where we
Bunch of
at here?
whiny asses.
So she basically tells him that they have to return the stones to keep the universe from breaking down.
Which is like, have respect for the process of time travel. So I like that too.
Exactly. So Rogers, so we go back to 2012, and Steve Rogers manages to steal the Mind Stone, but Lang and Stark's attempt to steal the Space Stone fail, and Loki escapes with it. Rogers and Stark use their last size-altering PIM particle to travel to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s secret base under Cap's Lehigh in 1970. So they end up stealing the Space Stone from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s vault, as well as some vials of PIM particles from Hank Pym's lab so that they can return to the present. So Rocket and Thor travel to Asgard in 2013 to retrieve the Reality Stone from Jane Foster, Natalie Portman, which was kind of cool to see her make an appearance. And Thor obtains his former hammer, Mjolnir. Barton and Romanoff traveled to Voromir in 2014 and learned from the Soul Stone's keeper, the Red Skull, that it can only be acquired by sacrificing someone they love. After a brief struggle, Romanoff sacrifices herself, and Barton returns to the present with the Soul Stone. Now, Christy, you got something?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So Loki took the stone. So what does that mean for him now? Anything?
Well,
TBD.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's that created another, timeline that he actually got away with it. That's why they had to go back and steal it from 1970. And Disney Plus has a service coming out, and it's a Loki TV series.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, they could play with that.
That's what I was wondering. Does this mean that there's going to be a new one with Loki? He's now again the bad guy, who.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering. Okay.
So it exists.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The possibility exists now. Got it.
Well, something that I wanted, where was this? It was something that I wanted to kick over to Moni. Oh my gosh. Oh, well, no, basically back when they go back to, 1970, and you've got Cap, seeing, gosh, what was her name?
Peggy.
Yeah, seeing Peggy. I thought that was pretty cool. But I think that Rocket and Thor going back to Asgard was probably
heartbreaking. With Thor's mom. It was a little cartoonish, like Thor's behavior, because you'd think at some point he was going to step up, but it was still. I again was saying that this movie was fan service in every way. Cap and Peggy and Thor and his mother and all these things. Like I think everybody. Tony and his father.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we see a little bit of everything that the characters needed. You get Nebula and Gamora. There's a little bit of closure to some of these wounds that have been opened up, not just by people dying, but of also these unresolved conflicts of like not getting to say what you wanted to say before you never saw the person again.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, I thought it worked. It was kind of cool seeing Natalie Portman, and of course the fact that they got there and it was like the same day that his mother was gonna die
Yeah.
was. But that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to snap out of it. I mean, I think that throughout this movie, at least as far as PTSD is concerned, they were consistent with how it affected people all the way through the through the movie. Of course, there's a big high at the end, but that kind of traveled with the characters. And I can kind of appreciate that. They also do it in Game of Thrones with the Hound.
Yeah.
I mean, they, up until last week, the same thing. You can be a big badass, but when that hits you,
that's what it
you
is.
know. So
Yeah.
I do think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool when Thor was gonna warn his mom about what was gonna happen to her, and it was like she already knew and was kind of like,
she's
nope.
It's none of my business, and
Yeah.
she's not wrong about that either. Even though it was very brave of her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would have been like, what? But she was almost like, yep, something probably going to happen and that's okay. Now go finish your shit. And it was just funny because she was like, you are like so from the future. And he's like, okay, yeah, I am. And just kind of like melts into her arms. It was cute.
It was a
how
mom
they
moment.
Totally.
Knew what he needed, and
Yeah.
she gave it to him even at a little bit of sacrifice to herself of not getting to know what her fate was going to be or possibly be able to change it or anything.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about Natasha's sacrifice for the stone. So I get, I totally get why she did it, and I thought that it was kind of it was a cool scene, but it's also funny because I know that in the back of your mind you'd have to be thinking, I never thought that there would be a day that I would be fighting to kill myself.
Yeah,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying, for somebody else, but of course, for the greater good. But I get why Natasha did it, and we know that she's got there's a Black Widow coming out that's going to be a prequel, so we'll definitely see this character again. But of course, all of the events of this movie are permanent. How do y'all feel about it being Clint being the one there? I mean, after I watched the movie, at first I was like, well, maybe it should have been Bruce that would have been there. But then I'm like, I don't know, man, the Hulk might have survived that fall. You know what I mean? I think he would have been able to save her or something crazy. But seeing as they kind of went away from that storyline, it started working for me a little bit more after I thought about it. But did they sell it?
When it first happened, I was annoyed because actually I said out loud, I was like, well, now it's just going to be a sausage fest because at that point it was just all the men that were left. But I think it's a big step forward in equality for women in film and as heroes that she got to, quote unquote, be the one that sacrificed herself. And it wasn't just like, well, the little lady can't die because she's a girl. Like, why not?
Yeah.
I really do. If I didn't know that there was going to be a prequel, I'd be kind of upset because, I don't. Through all the films that she's been in, that they've done a ton with her character, she's alluded to her relationship with Clint as a friend, and she's alluded to the things she's done in her past, but we've never gotten to see much of that, really. And so I was kind of like, well, just literally throw her away as she's thrown over the over the cliff, But anyway, I think it worked. I think it pulled on the and kind of informed one more loss and now a real permanent one for the rest of the team.
Okay, Christy.
Yeah. I mean, I was a little shocked that more people didn't die as far as like in this process. I thought because everybody was talking about this huge twist and blah blah blah, and I mean, of course it's that they all died at the half of them died at the beginning. So I had gone into this movie expecting a lot of these people to die. So the way they did it with the beginning, there was no emotional, like tear your heart out that they were gone because it was just kind of like they were just gone. There was no, like, you didn't get to see them fight and die there's this big drama behind it. So I was prepared for many more to die, I guess, during this process, and they didn't.
Did you see the film before it? Did you see Infinity War?
I did, but last time I saw it was at the movie theater. So it's been a while.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of trying to play catch up, trying to remember what had happened back in that movie, plus having not seen all the movies in between or most of them. I was like, huh? But I did. I liked her character, and I mean, I like her in general. But I mean, it made sense that she would be the one to die in my head for some reason. I don't know why. I wasn't surprised that she did die. And yeah, like you, I'm happy that she is going to have another story, for a prequel, which it's almost will be like she didn't die. But so yeah, it worked
Yeah.
for me.
Okay. So on Morag in the same year, Nebula and Rhodes steal the Power Stone before Peter Quill can, and this was from the Guardians movie, Moni. So whenever you watch it, that'll make a little bit more sense. Um, Rhodes returns to the present with the Power Stone, but before Nebula can return, her cybernetic implants overload as her mind connects to her past self. Thanos uses this connection to assess future Nebula's memories and thereby learns of the Avengers' plans. Past Nebula disguises herself as future Nebula and travels to the future as a spy. See, this was one of those parts that was totally mind blowing. That the fact that Thanos finds out that, he finds out what happens, but also, regardless of what happened to him in this movie, he got to see the fact that, that there is a timeline where he won.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It makes him an even more insufferable dick.
Yeah.
So now I see why they killed him so quickly in the beginning of this film, because he still gets screen time and he still gets to be a dickhead. So, yes.
Absolutely. So no matter what happens, you know what I'm saying, he at least, has that on his plate. So Banner and Thor construct a new Infinity Gauntlet, and Banner uses it to restore everyone to whom Thanos disintegrated. While this is happening, past Nebula uses a time machine to transport Thanos and his ship to the present day, and he obliterates the Avengers headquarters with an aerial bombardment. Thanos tells them that he will use the Infinity Stones to destroy the universe and create a new, better one, and nobody will remember the old one. The Avengers fight him, but they are no match for him. He overpowers all of them and summons his army to take siege on the Earth. Now, the cool thing about this was, for me, is the fact that they showed how powerful that the Mad Titan, aka Thanos, was, even without the gauntlet. I mean, he pretty much was. I mean, you could say up to a certain point. I mean, he was almost indestructible because people were doing things to him that anybody else probably in this universe would have probably been utterly destroyed on. But I could really appreciate that. So at least up to this point, Moni, of course, you had the Thor, full blown lightning Thor, and you have
a now worthy Captain America.
Yeah, exactly. You have all of that going on. But is that something that you want to talk about? Is that moment the Cap moment from the comics?
Oh, go ahead.
Well,
sorry, I'm just laughing because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, this is something. Well, the thing with Captain America getting Thor's hammer was something that happened in the comics. So I guess a lot of people who were watching it was actually a highlight of the theater that I was in.
Hollering in the theater too.
Yeah, everybody exploded. I mean, that was definitely one of the highlights of this movie for me, was actually seeing that happen. And also, I mean, Cap is a badass, because when he threw the shield up and it went past Thanos, and then he threw the hammer and it bounced off of it and hit him in the back, I was like, damn, dude, you must have like uploaded, instructions to that. But then again, some people were talking about the lightning thing. Well, how can he do the lightning? But if you, I think in the comics it says if you have the hammer, you have all of the powers of Thor or something like that. So Steve Rogers was, he definitely was checking Thor out in Infinity War. It was like, oh man, that would be so cool to do that. So he kind of had a roadmap. But was that your moment too, or?
Yeah, that was my jam. I'm the Cap girl anyway, so I was just like, here it is. Like, oh my god, it was fan service, like you said. It was amazing to have that moment transpire on film in front of us. Oh my god.
Well, Christy, one thing I just wanted to ask you was just the fact that, when all of these guys are fighting, did you totally think that somebody was about to get killed? Because Thanos was on a roll at that point.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't looking good, that's for sure. And then he shows up with his army, and you're thinking this is where everybody's gonna die now. Finally,
Yeah.
everybody's gonna die. Which, by the way, you're talking about everybody lost their shit. Everybody lost their shit with this next part. Like people were screaming. And the next, what happens next, and it was awesome. And I did kind of know a little bit about the Captain America hammer thing. I mean, I just knew that. I didn't know that he got it in the comic, but I knew that only worthy people, right, were allowed to hold it, and its
Mm-hmm.
powers don't work if you're not worthy or something like that. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
like what's it called, the Sword and Stone or something.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
But yeah, it's kind of what I was figuring, was like he's probably one of the only ones in that group that could manipulate it, because he is kind of just like the pure heart good, he's just a really, really pure of heart, good guy. And some
Mm-hmm.
of these guys have major baggage, so
Yeah.
he
Well,
would probably
also,
be the only one that could hold it.
it was how it was shot, because
Yeah.
remember at this moment, Thor is frantically trying to get the gauntlet. He calls Stormbreaker.
Hmm.
Thanos, the badass that he is, catches it, and then he's trying to push Stormbreaker into Thor's chest the same way that Thor did him in Infinity War, and he was actually winning. He was about to kill Thor, and then
No.
yeah, and then you see Mjolnir pop up, as we've seen a million times with Thor. He
Yeah.
was going to call the hammer, and then it hits Thanos, but instead of going into Thor's hand, it goes Steve Rogers. So I thought that was shot
Hmm.
pretty dope. And once again, you could also tell that overweight Thor, it really affected him able to fight. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? It was
He
just
had no
totally.
endurance anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. He looked like slow and drunk, but he had some great moments. So, uh, our characters are defeated. Steve Rogers did his best with the hammer, but Thanos just basically grabbed him by the neck and slams him on the ground
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of throws him. And Steve Rogers is on his last leg, and I think all of us, everybody was like, "Oh, this is it." Thanos is about to kill him, and then Steve Rogers gets a message from Sam and says, "Look to your left," and he turns around, and the portals that Doctor Strange creates, you see Black Panther, Shuri, and the Dora Milaje.
Talk about another moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Hmm.
was that was pretty cool. And
That is when everybody lost their shit. When
Yeah.
when they
yeah,
all arrived, everybody was like screaming and clapping in the movie
and
theater.
it was Okoye, of course, and it was the same thing in my theater. Everybody's going crazy, and then the little head nod, and then all the other portals open up, and then you basically get like
Everybody.
everybody pretty much comes up. So
And
when
that's
Stephen
because
Str-
you're like, oh yeah, they're alive again. Like I completely
Mm-hmm.
forgot that
yeah,
they because that the snap was successful, that meant that they were back too. And I completely forgot about that until that moment. And I was like, holy shit, that's right. They can, they're alive again too. So that's you're like all of it comes together and you freak out.
well, remember that there was a moment when they were asking, because a couple of the characters had known that it was work, but there was a moment when he was asking, he was like, "Well, did it work?" And he was like, "Hell, I don't know." And then you got Clint's phone ringing, and
Right.
Ant-Man and all of those things. But yeah, that was, the music, the score and how that
Yeah.
works, with that moment. And just the fact that you saw Thanos and his forces and they were overwhelming, headed Steve Rogers' way. And then, of course, it goes to show you that they actually have their own thing. But so when the reinforcements arrive, and we've got all the resurrected Avengers, Doctor Strange, fellow sorcerers, the armies of what's left of Asgard. We got Wakanda, the Ravagers. They all, they all go at it. So it's pretty dope.
The
The fighting
gang's all
is
here.
intense.
Yes.
Mhm.
Exactly. And the fighting's pretty intense. And, right on time, the Avengers get an assist from Carol Danvers, who joins the battle.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about that, Yardley, because so earlier in the film, on the one hand, they're like, "Where have you been?" She's like, "There's a lot of other, planets out here having the same issues you are." And I was like, "Yeah, back up off a girl. She got shit." But then when she goes like, "You're probably not going to see me for a while," I was like, AKA she's going to come back right at the particular moment. And she does.
Absolutely. I
What do
mean,
you got?
but but
Could have been there 5 minutes earlier, girl. Like,
well,
I don't know.
no, I mean, well, to be honest, I mean, they didn't need her because, the Scarlet Witch had, Thanos
Was a
dead right.
badass. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had to rain fire to be able to get out of that. So, you have to admit that what is it? It's Wanda, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You have to think that Wanda, she was doing her thing. I really did like that sequence, but yeah, absolutely.
She's like, you took everything from me. He's like, I don't even remember who you are. I'm like, you're such a dick. You need to die now. Again. Bring him back so you can die again, God damn it.
Go kill him in every dimension, please. He doesn't pop up anywhere else. But this is where I was talking about where, once she shows up, all the girls, like when they're doing the fighting, rally and start kicking some, like all get together and they're like, I got her back. And then all these girls like step in because all the guys are busy or doing whatever. But I was like,
which was the answer to my being mad about the sausage fest too.
Yeah.
Because when I was mad that like 20 minutes of the film, they didn't have Scarlett Johansson was dead. And so they had no girls. And then they have all these women get together. And I was like, yes, this is what I needed to see in this movie right now. So that was exciting. Although I was laughing because they pretty much let poor Spider-Man more or less by himself, like try to get across that battlefield with the gauntlet. And then as soon as all the women show up, they go together. And I'm just like, yeah, okay.
Oh, man.
So Thanos has them rain fires. And of course, we see the all of the bombardment that they're doing on the to where all the fighting is going. We see all of the cannons go up and they're shooting into something, and it's Captain Marvel coming, and she pretty much, she destroys Thanos' ship, which is pretty, actually a pretty dope scene. Ultimately, Carol is unsuccessful fighting Thanos because he ends up using the thing that she gets her powers from, which is the Space Stone. He pulls it out of the gauntlet, punches her, so she's basically out of the fight at that point. But I thought the struggle was pretty cool because when he tried to headbutt her and it just did absolutely nothing, I was like, oh man, that was pretty cool. And I don't think you are more familiar with Captain Marvel, but when we've seen her in this movie, like when she's going through the ships in her movie and in this one, she's in like that binary mode, but she can't hold that forever, can she? That's like a thing that she gets into, or how does that work?
I think she can because she has Marvel's powers.
Okay.
But just like every comic, though, there's so many different versions that I'm having trouble remembering off the top of my head.
Oh, well, I mean, but also this is the MCU, so I know that these characters do have their rules for their movies. I just wasn't
I also
sure.
feel like they have to do, like, because they're shooting a film, they have to be like, well, they have to take that off so we can see her face. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not all CG. They have to show the actress's face sometimes or this or that. Like, I feel like some of those choices are made for cinematic purposes for sure.
Okay, so Captain Marvel is knocked out of the fight for a second, and at the last minute, as Thanos is about to snap his fingers in victory, Stark jumps in, grabs the gauntlet, gets pushed off, and as the inevitable appears to be on the horizon, Thanos snaps his fingers, and we realize that Stark's gauntlet had retrieved and activated the Infinity Stones, and with a surge of overwhelming power, Tony snaps his finger, disintegrating Thanos and his army. However, the energy feedback mortally wounds Stark, and he dies in the presence of the original Avengers and Peter Parker, without saying any last words. And something that we didn't mention, we didn't really emphasize on, was earlier in the movie when Bruce Banner did the snap. It shriveled up his arm, pretty bad. So, of course, with Tony being a human, that's what happened. So, all right, let's put it out there. So, Iron Man is dead.
Really dead. Actually dead.
Dead.
Yeah. They kind of fooled me with that. I really didn't know when he was, struggling with Thanos' hand, that was happening. And then I had to remember that gauntlet, like it changes sizes and it actually pulls the stones. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, I thought Tony Stark went out pretty cool, and that was a huge moment in the history of the MCU.
Yeah, I'm glad that Pepper got that second to tell him that they were going to be okay too. Like, just to kind of let him know, like, as a person with a family, it's just sort of like that's what you would need to hear as you were dying, was just that your family was going to Move on. Although, was anybody waiting for Star-Lord to redeem his damn self from Infinity War? Like, was anybody waiting for him to jump on and like get this Infinity Gauntlet this time, since he was the one that let them fail the last time? Like, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
I just was like, what's he doing right now? Like, why isn't he the one redeeming himself?
Another. Well, I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, he got back what he wanted. I guess that was enough for him, story wise. But
I do think it's funny too that Gamora sees him and her sister's like, well, it was either him or a tree as far as like romantic interest. And Gamora's just like not impressed, and they take off, which is a whole other thing that I hope we see in another film coming up.
How did that work for you, Christy?
I mean, with Iron Man dying, well, he's my favorite character, so I wasn't really happy about it. I love Robert Downey Jr. He's my man. He's been my man since early '80s, but
Since the way back.
I really do like him. I don't want to be awful, but I can't stand Pepper Potts. I don't know what it is.
I can't stand Gwyneth Paltrow either.
She just has zero personality. I'm just kind of like, that just doesn't fit to me with Iron Man.
So she's your Jessica Chastain.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I'm like,
let's just put it this way: in the movie Seven, where her head, spoiler alert,
we're like, darn,
20-year-old movie where her head ends up in a box.
Yeah.
That's really what should happen.
Yeah.
To Pepper Potts and maybe to go to.
And I'm sorry, but her being a superhero just really was like, what? Come on, give me a fucking break. That bugged me when I saw she had her little suit. Because whenever in the beginning, whenever the little girl found the mask and he's like, oh, that's for mom, I thought that was like some weird bedroom toy or something that he had got for her. I was like, okay, that's weird. But when I found out she was actually a superhero, I was like, oh, bleh, bleh. And then he's like, what are you reading? She's like, I'm reading a book on composting. I'm like, oh, could you be any more insufferable?
They should have put like a Goop commercial in there. She's like, I'm reading about Goop. I'm like, oh my God.
No, I would have died. I would have gotten up and walked out of the theater if they had done that. But I was upset that he died. I knew somebody big had to die. Look, it was going to happen. Somebody big had to die. He's probably one of the biggest ones, and he's my favorite. So I was bummed. I love him. I love his character. I kind of wish Gwyneth had stepped on the bomb and taken it for everybody, but that's not going to happen. So yeah, I mean, I was upset and I'm pissed because I really love his movies, and that means they're gone, no more Iron Man movies. So that sucks. But, I mean, it's to be expected that one of the big ones was going to die. I had theorized it was either going to be Hulk or Iron Man that was going to die. So wasn't a surprise to me. I mean, it worked. I can understand why. And there was a lot of foreshadowing. I knew when he was about to go and help them with the time travel that he was going to die. Like, you could just tell. There was a lot of foreshadowing, especially with the daughter, that relationship, everything before that, just very much the focus on him and his family and his fears of losing his family. You knew that, yeah, one is going to die. So I wasn't surprised. I loved how they put all this together. I don't know who the fuck thinks of this shit, but I mean, it's mind-blowing to me to come up with this kind of story and weave all these people together like this in such a fantastic way. For somebody who's not even into comics and isn't like a huge, super fan, again, walking out of there just like emotionally drained and like, oh my God. And I didn't even know all the characters, so it was, they really did it right.
Okay, well, all right. So let's close this on out. So, following a funeral for Tony Stark, Thor appoints Valkyrie as the Queen of New Asgard and joins the Guardians of the Galaxy, which was going to be awesome to see.
That was funny.
Those characters, interact. So I know that are we all in agreement that would be that's going to be awesome at some point?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I love her.
So Rogers returns the Infinity Stones and Mjolnir to the original places in time, but instead of returning to the future, he says he stays in the past to be with his old girlfriend, to be with Peggy Carter. So in the present, Steve Rogers returns, and an elderly Rogers passes on his shield to Sam. So Steve returning to the past and being with Peggy establishes an alternate history, kind of leaving the past we know where Steve was frozen and Peggy moved on intact, but creating a parallel world where he returned and they had a life together. So old man Steve Rogers,
We finally got that.
well, yep, you got that, and then just like in the comics, because in the comics Bucky got it and Sam got it though. Falcon got it as well, but and we all know that those two characters have a Disney Plus show coming up. You know, as they have a Disney Plus show coming up, so we're gonna see how that's gonna play out. But yeah, we got old man Steve. Did that work for you? Because that was literally pretty much the the end of the movie. Like I said, if you were a fan, you kind of knew about that, but I don't know. Did it work?
Oh, sorry. To revisit, you said did that work as far as Thor and Valkyrie? So first of all, Queen Valkyrie, I want a whole movie on that. For yeah, Guardians is going to be set up to be like buddy comedy style when you have Thor, who's still dad bod Thor, with the Guardians. I think that's going to be super fun, and they're going to figure out what Gamora and everybody is up to. And then yeah, so damn internet. I tried to avoid spoilers. I went and saw it Saturday, so some people obviously saw it Thursday and Friday. And the Peggy Carter thing, I saw just a still photo of him and Peggy together, so I knew what was going to happen. So as soon as he went to go to return it, I was like, God damn it. Just because I knew what was going to happen. But I think that was nice. And I like that they had the moment where Bucky sort of like nods so that Sam Wilson like knows like also he's saying it's okay that it's not him either. So I'm excited to see what that future brings, or what they do with it versus the comics and everything else. So yeah, I really liked the ending. I was sad about Steve Rogers because again, Captain America is my jam in the films anyway, but he deserved to have that good life. He had such a deep loneliness and emptiness from basically being a man out of time, you know, a man who had been frozen in ice during his own lifetime and now was in a different one where and found it to be very lonely. So I'm glad he got to have that experience.
Yep.
Okay, Christy, did I land with you?
Yeah, I thought it was sweet. I thought it was really sweet. And I really liked that they did actually kind of go back and show them dancing together, you know, instead of it just being him being old. And, you know, clearly he said he did what, you know, Iron Man told him to do was, you know, to go live. And then you got to see just a little tiny tidbit of it, you know, that he actually, you know, of them together. And I have to go back and watch that movie too. I've seen it. It's just, again, I saw it years ago. So this is all so hard for me to keep track of. But of course, they did allude to it when they went back in time to get the, and he saw her, you know, working in her office. So again, you're thinking that, you know, he didn't say anything to her. He just walked away, and it was like, oh, you know, that he really wanted that. And so it's awesome that, you know, and I was thinking, you know, how he would do it. You know, he saved, I guess, that last one, that the last one he returned, you know, and then just stayed there and then had his life. And it was cool the way they did it because he showed up 5 seconds later as an old man.
Yeah.
Well, I would definitely say, well, make sure, whenever you get a chance to play catch up, I would definitely recommend that you at least watch the first Guardians movie. And what's another recommendation you would give her?
I have to see Doctor Strange.
Yes,
because I love
Strange,
Tilda, and I'm
Guardians.
like, shit, if I knew she was in that, I would have watched that movie a long time ago.
Have you seen all the Thor films? Have you seen Ragnarok, for instance?
I've only seen the first one.
Oh, you need to see Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Hulk, you got to see Ragnarok because that's talk about a buddy comedy too. So.
And I need to see Ant-Man because I love Paul Rudd. So it's like, what? I've missed.
But don't watch Ant-Man. I mean, I would say do Ragnarok and
y'all are gonna have to make me a list, chronological order.
Ragnarok. Yeah, I mean, because I still haven't seen the original Ant-Man.
Really?
I've never been interested in that character. I thought the character worked in Infinity War, but I never saw the original one. And then when the Ant-Man and the Wasp came on Netflix, I ended up watching it through Netflix. But that was just totally a character that I was like, I mean, I just didn't care.
It is a more
and years went
juvenile
by.
level. They're enjoyable films, but it is more like it almost feels like a kids movie a little bit.
Yeah, but okay. So I mean, overall, any final thoughts? What would you rate the movie on a scale of 1 to 10, Moni?
11. I give it all.
Okay, Christy,
I
what you
mean,
got?
for what I knew and going into it, the way they put it together, I give it a 10. I thought it was fantastic. It got me in the gut, got me on my feels, and I'm not even into the level that y'all are. So, I mean, it does say something that somebody who walks in not even knowing half the characters still took that much enjoyment out of it. I really love seeing all the worlds collide. That for me, even in books, when I'm reading a book and I've like read a previous book from that author, and they pull in the character from another, because your heart is just so invested in these characters, and to see them actually all together. I mean, I'm sure that's why these movies are so huge, is everybody loves that. So even when you're not 100% knowing what the hell's going on, it's still just such a I love seeing that. And then how they managed it, make it all work that way is just, to me, it's genius. I mean, who writes this shit? I mean, good God, I don't know how you can put storylines like that together with all these characters and make them actually work like this. It's really amazing to me. I have a question for y'all.
Yeah.
Do you think they'll do another big unification movie, or will they just go back to just like
Eventually, maybe, because it's like a planned out. This was like phase one, and now they're going to do the side character, movies again, and then maybe eventually. What do you think, Yardley?
I'm sorry, you broke up for a second there.
I'm sorry. Do you think that eventually they'll have all the characters, like maybe at the end of
again, like another
Oh,
movie?
you mean just have another big one? I think. Gosh,
in 10 years?
I mean, there will be something. There will be something similar to this that's probably going on even in individual characters, because they're doing the Eternals movies. They're doing some gosh, there's so much potential. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's always going to be awesome, because for me, normally, had I not seen this movie in the theater, I would probably have given it a 9. But the fact that I saw this thing in a theater in 3D, and that Avengers Assemble moment,
Yeah.
and then everybody in the theater exploded, I'm going to give it a 10. Because the experience was just different, being in there. And the Avengers Assemble thing is just it's a big deal, and then, you just got everybody, it's just, it's a cool moment. And it's going to be hard for people to do a movie like this and to kind of top, what they're doing. I mean, it's just, they're on fire. I mean, this movie has already crossed the $2 billion dollar mark, I think, after today.
Wow. Is there any other new characters like coming up, or is this it? Like, I mean, are all the characters out, or is there any new ones in the?
Do we, like, beyond speculation? I mean, I don't know who else they might pull in for some of these. I mean, for instance, if you're going to do prequels and stuff, there may be people we haven't seen before, or at least a younger version of somebody we have seen before. I don't know. Do you know, Yardley? Have you seen any speculation?
What do you mean, on the upcoming movies?
Yeah,
Like,
is there any new characters going to be introduced?
Oh, new characters. I think they're doing what is it, Shang-Chi? He's like this martial arts. He's actually he's either the first or one of the first characters that I think Stan Lee came up with. He's this martial artist. I didn't really, and maybe I butchered who the character is, but I know that that's coming up. And then you have oh gosh, I don't think that this is necessarily going to be tied to the MCU, because I think that might be some old Sony thing. The Morbius, the Morbius the Vampire or something with who's the guy who played the Joker? Isn't he? I think he's playing him.
Oh, gotcha.
Gosh, what's his name?
Which version of Joker?
The Joker from the Suicide Squad.
God, Jared Leto. There we go.
Oh, is that DC too?
No, Morbius is Marvel, right?
Marvel. I mean, I'm sorry, Marvel. I'm sorry, I mixed them up.
I think it's one, but the property is owned by Sony, so it's not going to be attached to this universe. And I'm trying to remember, and you got the Eternals coming up, and that's the thing that had the Angelina Jolie casting, or they were in negotiations rather with
Who
her.
is it?
Angelina Jolie.
No, what was the character again? I'm sorry.
The character Cersei from the Eternals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and but there's some others, but yeah, there's definitely different things coming up. But I'm glad that hopefully the listeners have hung with us for this show. It's a little bit longer, but the content was really fun to talk about, and Endgame was pretty big. So if you don't have any other thoughts, Moni can let us know what the next podcast will be about.
I just want to say one more thing. This has nothing to do with what the movie, but the Godzilla movie, I am dying.
Oh my God, right?
I'm dying. I cannot wait.
Like yelling in the theater.
Oh my God. I am so excited for this movie.
Did you see the 5-minute thing on HBO now? The 5-minute footage?
Oh.
Hell yeah. Oh my God.
I have to look that up.
With Game of Thrones. All right.
Dude, I have been theming for a good sci-fi. There's just not a lot of good sci-fi coming out. And this is just going to be, I can't wait. I hope I don't get my hopes up too high, but it looks freaking amazing.
If you have HBO now, Christy, you have to go on there like right now and just look at the it's a 5 minutes from the movie. It's so dope.
I did not know that Millie Bobby Brown was in it, and then I saw her character, and I was like, "Oh my God!" I was like freaking out.
I'm not going to that movie to see Millie Bobby
No, but
Brown.
I was excited she was in it.
Monsters.
Hell yeah. And it's got all the fucking monsters, man. That's what I want to see when I see a monster movie is a bunch of fucking monsters. Thank you.
Yes.
God. All right. I just had to get that out.
I'm moving on because I got to get my butt to work. But next week we're going to do on Netflix, available now, Extremely Wicked, Stop It, Shockingly Evil and Vile, which is the Ted Bundy story.
So good.
Basically independent film. It's actually still in some small theaters, but it is available on Netflix. It stars Zac Efron as Ted Bundy and Lily Collins as the woman who was in love with him. And so it's a soft, easy sell. We're going to watch the movie, and then we'll just talk a little bit about Ted Bundy's background. If I get a chance in my current shit show of a life, I will try to find a couple of similar type of serial killers or murders, just to kind of give context, and because I'm sure most of our listeners know a lot about Ted Bundy. But yes, let's watch along with us. And I've seen half the film. I have thoughts on it, and I'm interested to see what y'all are going to think.
Awesome. I watched it the day it came out for sure. I was lucky enough to work from home that day, so I got to work and watch at the same time. But
nice.
Yep.
Okay. Well, too easy. And it's not a series of docs. It's just one thing, right?
Just a 1 hour and 50-minute long film. And we'll talk a little bit, like I said, I'll put some information about Ted Bundy himself on there as well.
All right. Well, hey, you know what? That was fun. And to everybody who's listening, thank you very much. And keep it real.
Yes.